So The Athletic comes out with an article on Monday. I forget who the author was. A lot of CU fans are talking about how his LinkedIn says he graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, which might be an important detail to that article. I'm not quite sure. I don't think it was as disparaging as it might have appeared on the surface. I clicked into the article. I read the whole thing right on Monday. It was basically a lot of stuff that we already knew. The players that were here prior to Coach Prime didn't necessarily have, I don't want to say a legitimate shot, because they did have a shot. We've seen it with a guy like Trevor Woods or Charlie Offerdahl. They had everything going against them when they got here. They weren't really shown much respect from the incoming players, as we've seen with Shedeur's tweet. They weren't shown much respect by the coaches that were coming here. It doesn't sound like many of the coaches tried hard to get to know him. They had to go out there on the football field and make a name for themselves. They had to go prove why they wanted to stay with Colorado. And I think one of the quotes was, "I felt like I had to be perfect every single practice."
Right.
That can be taken a lot of different ways. But I think how The Athletic tried to frame the article is that it was disparaging to these kids' mental health, the way that they were treated throughout the spring, and they didn't feel very supported. They felt like they didn't belong, and that's why we ended up seeing 53 of them go to a different team. And it also talked about how a lot of them went to a team that wasn't a power conference, and if they did go to a power conference team, they didn't really play much. There were only a couple guys that started on power conference programs.
Right.
And so The Athletic did show that side of it as well. And then what happens in social media, things get posted by The Athletic, quote graphics in particular. People don't actually read the article. People think the article was all just ripping on Coach Prime, and this includes somebody like Shedeur Sanders, but it was really a lot of players, a lot of current players on the team that saw the quote graphic and thought that they had to have something to say about it. And then Shedeur Sanders goes ahead and he tweets, "I don't even remember this guy. He was probably mid."
Yeah, he said, "I don't even remember him. TBH, bro, had to be very mid at best." And the quotes that you're referencing to, my friend Chase Howell, are from Xavier Smith. And he said, in regards to Coach Prime, quote, "I was actually getting mad, like tears coming to my eyes, because, bro, you never even tried to get to know me," end quote. And the second quote, which you kind of hit the nail on the head with the mental health, is, quote, "He was destroying guys' confidence and belief in themselves. The way he did it, it could have been done with a little bit more compassion." Let's dissect that one a little bit, because I think compassion is the focus word there. Because I do think like the way that Coach Prime went about, I'm bringing my Louis, all that kind of, it was very brash. It was very, are you in, are you out? And I don't think that was an awful thing from Coach Prime. I think it's just not sugarcoating anything. Like, what do you want to do? You want to let Xavier Smith down lightly? Hey, bud, like you're just not good enough, buddy. Like, we really appreciate your effort. You're a great guy. But you know what? Maybe you want to get in that portal, my man. Maybe you're more Burberry. Maybe you're not Louis. No. Like, Coach Prime doesn't have time to play those games and whatnot. And so I can understand it from a feelings perspective of like, man, like this guy, didn't give me the time of day, this and that. The world isn't a very nice place, right? I'm sure you've had your fair share of people not giving you the time of day. I know I've had my fair share of people in this industry that have not given me the time of day. What do? Sulk? Cry? Suck my thumb? No. You got to eat what's on your plate, man. You got to move forward. Figure out what your next move is. The only thing that dwelling does is hold you back. And so, like, I don't want to make excuses or this or that, because I can understand where Xavier Smith is coming from, but what good does this do? Shine a light on how Coach Prime has to revamp one of the worst programs we've seen in recent college football memory? Like, I don't know, man. Like, square peg, round hole. Like, just because you're not going to play with Coach Prime and company doesn't mean you can go thrive somewhere else. And we've obviously seen the statistics, and I'm not trying to, rant on the kid here. But at the end of the day, like, what was Coach Prime supposed to give everyone a first-class ticket on the way out? Say vacation? I don't know.
It's a whole another discussion surrounding college football. Do these kids deserve 4 years out of school when they're there to play football and they're there to be a big part of the team? Like, it is a job, and we have avoided that word for so long, talking about student athletes, that it's not a job, that they're just there for school. And The athletics is the side piece to it.
Right.
But I think now in this NIL world, in this transfer portal world, it's much more of a job than it's ever been. And these guys, you really can't treat them with kids' gloves. This is an industry that makes billions and billions of dollars. It's very high revenue. There's a lot at stake. Coach Prime's job is at stake. If he didn't turn it, look at what they said about him after going 4-8. Imagine if he let a bunch of those players play this past year and they win 2 games. Then think about what they're saying about Coach Prime. They're probably saying he doesn't even still deserve a job. It's very, very high stakes, and Coach Prime had to do what he had to do. And I think, fortunately, like, these guys did have a landing spot. They could go play college football somewhere else. Xavier Smith had a great year at Austin Peay. He was a freshman All-American. He's now going into FCS football. I think FBS football. UTEP is where he transferred. And he's probably going to be a starting player there because it sounds like the head coach really likes him. So these guys had other opportunities. There's a bunch of places you can go play college football. It wasn't going to happen with Colorado, and it's hard to clearly take a side because I think these guys obviously had a spot on a team. When you join the university, like, there is a sort of promise that you're going to be there for 4 years. You're going to be able to get your degree.
Right.
But it's so high stakes now. It's so much different than it used to be, and it's hard to give them a fair share when they were as bad as they were in 2022. Yeah,
and it's just one of those situations where, again, I don't really know if there's a right side here. Like, I want to show some compassion. I do understand where he's coming from and how he's feeling. I'm not just trying to say, like, whoa, we'll move on to the next, like, don't dwell. Like, it's human to feel some type of way and have emotions and be upset about how things have gone down. But again, it's business is business, to your point. It's so high stakes. You know, it's Coach Prime Deion Sanders. I mean, because here's the other thing. Let's say someone bought Mile High Sports tomorrow. In the back of my head, I'd be like, well, damn, I might be out of here. Like, that's kind of like the first thought. I mean, you see it in professional sports even, right? It's like new coach comes in, new coaching staff typically comes with them. Sometimes new players come with them as well. Like, when you have a change in leadership at the top, there's usually a trickle-down effect. And so, again, I don't think there's a right side here. I'm a little irked at how Shedeur and Coach Prime have handled it on social media.
I think that's a whole nother discussion.
Absolutely.
And we're going to get to that.
That is a completely separate discussion, which we'll dive into throughout the course of the program, because I do have a little bit of not an issue, but like, really, guys, you have to do that type of energy with that. But at the end of the day, hey, Coach Prime is doing what's best for him. Xavier Smith is doing what's best for him. That's how I kind of look at it. And this is where I do have a little, like what was the motive of the story from The Athletic? That you're going to release this information about a kid that has been out of the program for about a year. Why? It just seems like everybody wants to tear Coach Prime down. And I'm not trying to play, Trump fake news card here, but I'm just like, what is the value of that story? Like, what did we learn? That Coach Prime had to do what he had to do to build this team up? Ooh. Like, I don't get it.
We work in the media world. We know how it all operates. You're looking for clicks. You need attention. This story clearly got attention. It was smart on the author's part to write this story because he knew it would get some attention. It might even have gotten some athletic subscriptions. And to be honest with you, I had canceled my athletic subscription right after the story. It really had nothing to do with the story.
I've never subscribed in my life.
It reminded me that I was still paying for it. And, like, at first they're like, it's $1 a month for the first 12 months. And then they were charging me quite a bit more. So I was like, hey, I'm canceling this.
Here's the thing I'll say about The Athletic. And I respect, well, now they've got bought up by the Times. We have gone, I think, now year 4 without a Denver Nuggets beat report from The Athletic. I don't even know if they have an Avalanche reporter right now. So, like, here's the thing. If we're going to be fair, how do you have a team that is about to go back-to-back, at least to the NBA Finals, with the defending NBA champions, and you don't have a dedicated reporter for the team?
I feel like they don't have anybody in Denver anymore. I don't think anybody's
I don't think they have Rockies.
The
Who does Bron? I don't even know. Like, I know the old saying, like, you are what your record says you are, right? And they won one game. But I think you bring up the great point of, I don't think everybody understands the level of dysfunction that had set in around that football program, dating back to the initial departure of Mel Tucker, leading up to Carl Durrell's season with the team and whatnot. Like, yes, the one win on the season was a byproduct of that dysfunction, but to try to, untangle all of those cords, it requires a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, this is not, hey, like, let's load up the moving truck. Like, you had to get people in here and overhaul this program for the most part because of everything and the I don't know what the right word is, but it was just dysfunctional. That's probably the simplest way to put it here, Chase, is for about 3 or 4 years there, the Colorado Buffaloes football program was an absolute mess. And Coach Prime has been the one tasked with coming in here, cleaning it up, and he's doing it his way, which is already going to frustrate people. But everybody wants to ignore the fact of what came before Coach Prime before casting judgment about what he's done to get them out of it.
That's exactly right. And a lot of it wasn't even Coach Durrell's fault. I do think part of it, like Coach Durrell was only able to do so much with this team. They were not able to get high caliber talent, whether it was through the transfer portal, which was the biggest issue, but also just what Colorado meant to these high school kids and what Colorado meant to the kids in state. It was impossible to be able to form a good football team. And then you had a bunch of players that had scholarships that didn't belong.
Exactly. And I know there's like a movie or a TV show, but it's like, when you're so used to, have you ever had a boss that's just like super laid back, right? And you can just get away with everything. Okay, I'll just do this today. I'll do that tomorrow. I don't want to do this, so I won't do it, right? And then it's like you get your drill sergeant that comes in and changes the culture. Hey, I don't know what was happening here before, but we're doing it this way now. And it's just everybody wakes up, and it's no fault to the players that were here before, but to your point, Chase, they are not the caliber of player that is needed to help bring this vision to life with Coach Prime. It was a lot of happy to be here players. A lot of, I'm on a scholarship, I get to enjoy this beautiful campus and play football at the same time. Great. And that was okay for that era of Buffs football. But when you have Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders and Jordan Seaton and Shiloh and Travis Hunter, the standard goes from here to through the roof. And respectfully, this isn't a place where you get to just sit back, relax, keep your arms kicked up behind your head and enjoy the ride. No, this team is trying to compete. And the only way that they'll be able to compete is if they right the wrongs that were in front of them or came from years prior. So, again, I think it's a lethal cocktail of like old guard meets new guard. But at the end of the day, the new guard is doing what needs to be done to push this program forward.
It's funny you say that, Anilo, because we got, 4 months till college football? 3 months? I don't know.
Let's see, what is it? May, June, July? Yeah, 3.5.
Okay. 3.5 months. And what's the biggest story across all of the major sports networks? What is ESPN talking about on First Take? What is Skip Bayless talking about on FS1? What is Scott Van Pelt talking about last night on his show?
The Watch. Legendary.
It's May 1st, and the biggest story is the Colorado Buffaloes. Still.
It's because the Lakers aren't in the playoffs. The Lakers are out. Kevin Durant's Suns are out. I wish they would talk about hockey more, but I understand why they don't to an extent. But yeah, you're right. The Colorado Buffaloes on May 1st, May 2nd, probably May 3rd. One of, if not the biggest story in sports talk right now.
People just can't stop talking about us.
It's like a bad habit. Now I know what it's like, from the outside of like, oh, Dallas Cowboys, oh, Lakers, Yankees. They're getting that type of treatment right now. If Coach Prime or Shedeur sneezes, are they sick? Are they going to be out for the game in 3 months? Like, it's just crazy how obsessed, that's the word, obsessed the media is with Coach Prime. Love him or hate him. Hate clicks count too. That's the thing is maybe people don't want to admit. Maybe they're like, we're going to take Deion down. Let's show people what Deion Sanders is really about. Keep fueling that fire, baby. Keep fanning that flame.
Coach Prime is such an all press is good press guy. And I think it's not necessarily bad press. They're just talking about him. Like everybody wants to have an opinion about him. And Shedeur as well. But this is what he does. He's a marketing genius. In May, right after the spring game, everybody's talking about the CU Buffs.
Yep. After a spring game. And there was some BS commentary. Like I think Florio put out like a story who was like.
Florio's on the list.
Yeah, he was like, the hype around Coach Prime is dwindling after poor showing at spring. Florio. Did you see the weather? Because I know I woke up to snow and we had to cancel a magazine shoot for it. So please. And where's he from? The East Coast probably, right? Somewhere out there.
Your site is called Pro Football Talk. Stick with the pro football.
Exactly.
Let us take care of the college football.
Exactly. But Coach Prime actually quote tweeted on Twitter. There was a tweet that was put out. Coach Prime has officially bought more property and is now living rent-free in the minds of tens of millions of Americans. You can now add real estate mogul to the very long list of accomplishments Coach Prime has achieved in his life. He quote tweeted, he said, LOL, good one and true. LOL. Real estate mogul, rent free. And, I hate to admit this part, but probably learned a thing or two from Mr. Jones out there in Dallas. Very much a similar school of thought.
Now, I don't know if Shedeur or Coach Prime are regretting what they sent out yesterday, but I think this all works for the general positive.
Well, I think Coach Prime did take down one of the tweets where it was the quote tweet of the player's stats.
The Law Jesus.
Yeah, there's still some Law Jesus tweets
I don't know.
out
I
there.
just looked at it.
Oh, maybe not. Of the stats? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, because I saw somebody reply, or they quote tweeted his quote tweet saying Lord Jesus, and they put the picture of Shiloh when the Oregon player's like standing over him, and they said Lord Jesus.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
it's a Lord Jesus off.
So, and I love Jesus. Shout out Jesus, man.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you think they've handled this? Because that's where, if I do have an issue, it's with how they've handled it. Because I'm very much of the belief that specifically from Coach Prime is a coaching figure. Like, I can understand Shedeur. He's the same age as some of these kids, right? That's what they do. They chirp back and forth. So I understand, he was pretty mid or whatever the wording was that Shedeur used to kind of, get his words out there. Coach Prime is, and I know Coach Prime didn't come out and say, like, this kid sucked, I needed him off my team, right? He's just kind of, adding fuel to that fire with the Lord Jesus or just the retweeting or whatever. Like, but is that necessary? And I understand, hate clicks count too and all that kind of stuff. But, like, that's where I look at it as, like, your role as a coach. I'm not saying he crossed a line, but, like, I just think it's a little unnecessary from Coach Prime.
It is, and I think we sometimes have to separate his role as a coach and his role as a dad, and I think sometimes he struggles with that.
That's a good point.
I think we discussed a little bit about if Shedeur wasn't involved, maybe Coach Prime isn't tweeting this much. So I think we have to separate those two. I also just don't think it's a big deal. Lord Jesus is not that big of a deal. And maybe, you can spin anything on Twitter, and posting his stats at Austin Peay, a defensive back that had a few tackles, maybe didn't have any interceptions, but had a few passes deflected. He was a FCS freshman All-American. Like, he was a good player last year, even with those stats, or whoever was watching those games thought he was a really good freshman player. So it's not in the right taste, and maybe Coach Prime didn't quite know the background of that whole situation, which makes it look even worse. I think the Shedeur tweet is a little bit more questionable, in my opinion, just because it seems like more of an attack on Xavier Smith. Now, what a lot of national media folks are saying today and yesterday is it shows what kind of leader he is. I would look at that the other way, because what we saw right after that article posted is Shedeur was not the first one to comment about the article. A bunch of the current players were commenting, backing up their coaching staff, backing up what Coach Prime had done. And then Shedeur chimes in, and maybe in his head, and how we perceive it is different, but maybe in his head, he was just backing up his other teammates. He saw all of his other teammates tweeting about it. He's like, you know what? I got to chime in. I got to support my teammates as well. So in his head, he might have been thinking that he was trying to show leadership qualities. Disparaging an old teammate, does that make you not a leader? Maybe you can argue it, but he barely even knew the kid.
It's one of those situations, and I think that your thought process is spot on to an extent of, maybe he saw the other teammates doing it, but, like, what good comes out of that? Like, that's where I think it's a little bit of, like, think before you act. And it's like, you probably could have expressed those same thoughts and opinions privately and not have to deal with any of the public backlash if you just keep it off social media. And, like, that's the thing, is like, what does Shedeur Sanders have to gain? And maybe it's just simply a respect thing. Maybe it's like, hey, someone's going to talk down on us. I got to get, right back out there and make sure that my version's out there, my narrative's out there. I get it from that perspective. But this isn't helping Shedeur Sanders in any case. If anything, to your point, it maybe just makes NFL teams or, big steppers at the next level or even the collegiate level just look at him a little bit differently.